Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is Mario. He is an Italian, currently living in Amsterdam, but getting ready to move to another country, and he's lived in about 5 other countries on a few different continents before then. So we just dive into a lot of what life is like as an expat living in various countries around the world, how he's planning to make his move to Georgia, the country, not the state, and what drew him to Georgia, the remote work environment there, and what his company is doing to help make remote teams more interconnected. As the founder of a startup based in Amsterdam, he's literally trying to tackle this problem every day as a remote worker and running a remote team. So just a lot to dive into that was all really interconnected with what we want to talk about here on About Abroad. So it was awesome talking to Mario and getting to know him better and learning about a few different countries around the world that you may want to call home. So anyway, please help me in welcoming Mario to About Abroad. Mario, welcome to About Abroad. How are you doing?
Great, thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation. We've been trying to connect for a while now. We know a little bit about each other, but I imagine we'll get into some of the nitty gritty details today. So looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, great.
I was curious. So we were just chatting a little bit backstage, and you mentioned something I didn't want to go into. You're currently in the Netherlands, correct? But you're getting ready to make another move.
Yes, that's right. So canceled my rent here. So at the end of the month, my girlfriend and I will move abroad again. We're gonna go back to Italy for a couple of months. That's where I'm originally from, as you might have gotten from the name. And after that, the plan is to move to Georgia for a period of time, probably between 6 months to a year. But
Wow.
we'll see.
Are you taking advantage of the remote work visa that they're offering? Do you have to take advantage of that, or?
Well, actually, they do have this program that allows people of certain nationalities. I mean, it's like 90 nationalities, so it covers quite a lot of countries to Georgia without needing a visa for up to a year. So yeah, that's how we will be doing it. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's not something that's just because Georgia is not in the Schengen area.
No,
I don't think.
no,
No.
it's not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. So all right, that's cool. How'd you pick Georgia? And
Yeah,
actually, before we ask that, I gotta say, so like you said, moving abroad again. So how many different countries have you lived?
I've lived in 5 countries in my life so far. Yes, so Georgia is going to be the 6th.
Georgia will be the 6th. So let's rattle those off to give some context real quick. You've
Yeah.
got obviously Italy and the Netherlands.
Yes, I lived in the UK for almost 6 years, and I lived in Argentina and Bolivia.
Wow. You moved around a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, some of it I have to say was when I was growing up with my family. So it wasn't necessarily a choice that I made, but I did keep it up also afterwards. So
You think that gave you some like a interest in living like I guess, some people really crave living in other countries. Some people do it because, oh, my company moved me there. Do you feel like you fall more on one end of the spectrum or the other? Like you just chasing opportunity, or is it like, no, I just really enjoy the act of living in another place and like the challenges that brings?
yeah, I mean, I think there is definitely an aspect of having done it when I was young, when I was still living with my parents, which in a way opens your mind to the possibility of moving abroad, and that means also for example, when I would be looking for a new job, I wouldn't necessarily just look at the city or country I was living in, but also looking a little bit more broadly. So the moves happen because of that, actually, so chasing jobs. At the same time, I also guess, at least for me, you end up having a little bit of restlessness after you've been in the same place for a while. There is definitely also part of that, and just wanting to explore new places.
Yeah, I feel that too. I get itchy feet
Yeah,
every year or so. I start toying with the idea of like, would there be another place? Like, is this where I want to be for forever, or should I go ahead and try somewhere new? And it's been kind of weird. I've been in Valencia now for 3 years in Spain, and this I believe it's the longest I've lived anywhere since leaving university 12 years ago. So yeah, roots are really kind of settled in a place that I didn't expect to, which is kind of strange.
yeah. I mean, I have something extremely similar actually. It's funny you mentioned this because I was actually thinking about this for the first time only recently, but I've been here in Amsterdam now for almost 5 years. I think
Wow.
that's the longest I've been in one city, I believe, since I was 8. So,
It's a good ride. Wow.
yeah,
Amsterdam's one of those cities, man. I was asked actually on a previous episode of this show, like if there's anywhere else I would consider living in, and Amsterdam is always at the very top of that list. I love it. I'm not. I wonder. I think I would adapt. Back to the weather is the only thing. I wonder if like I've been living in sunny Spain for a while, and you're from Italy, so
yeah.
this as well. Like that is a little bit hard to think about getting over. But then every time I'm in Amsterdam, I just think like, oh, I could totally live here. I love the vibe there.
I think it's a great city, and I mean it's one of the reasons why I did stay here for so long as well is that it, it doesn't really provide you any excuses for wanting to leave in a way. It's just so easy to live here, I mean, it offers a lot in the sense that it's for an international city. I mean, despite being relatively small, there's less than 1 million people, it's quite compact, but it does offer a lot. But it's just so livable. I mean, starting from sort of the bicycle lifestyle, being able to just bike everywhere. I live in an area called the Pipe, which is fairly central, and literally
Oh,
you get everywhere in 15 minutes maximum. You don't have to worry about traffic. You don't have to worry about how other people are going to get there. Everybody's got a bike. Parking. It's just very easy to be here. In the end, it's quite international, but the Dutch are also quite easy to get along with. Everybody speaks perfect English, so despite my girlfriend's complaints she is Dutch, my Dutch is not that great. I've learned a little bit, but the thing is, you really almost do not need to speak Dutch to live here. So there's just a lot of positives about it. I have to say, for me, at this stage, it almost became too comfortable. You just really feel like you're not getting outside of your comfort zone. Yeah.
yeah. I could totally see that because it is, like you said, it's just an easy place to live. And I'm one of the things I love about Valencia actually is it's a super bikeable city. It's one of those that's always on those lists of like most bikeable cities in the world or in Europe or whatever. And they put a huge emphasis on the bike paths and all that, and just literally like you never need a car. I mean, it's also about 1 million people. And so that would be something like you always, whenever you move from one place to the next, you always kind of take something with you and leave something behind. And that's one of those things that I've always loved is a bikeable, walkable city.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of that in the US either. So I think it's something I always just really loved about Europe in general. But it's one of those things now, like the next city I go to, if I move or whatever, it has to be bikeable because I'm definitely taking that with me, and maybe that's why Amsterdam remains so one of the reasons it remains so high on my list.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious to see how it's gonna be in Georgia, for example. It's not known for its bike lanes. I don't think so.
No, yeah, yeah. Let's circle back to Georgia because that was actually how we got started on this. So, like, what led you guys to picking Georgia? What will life look like for you there, transitioning from Amsterdam?
Yeah, I mean, so the reason why we picked it, I mean, it's hard to really mention only one reason. I think I started to become interested myself in the country, just having heard about it as a holiday destination from a few people, and everybody was telling great stories about it. I really love mountains, which I think I've heard in one of the other episodes. Is something we have in common. I mean, you have the tallest mountains in Europe there, actually, more than the Alps, and just some incredible hikes. Not a lot of tourists. You actually, and I decided to look a little bit into it to go there on holiday. Then it never really happened, but I became interested in the area. At some point, I started to research a little bit other places where we could move, places that could also be good for remote workers. And I found out that actually Georgia is a up and coming destination for remote workers. So I was like, okay, already there's two cool things about it. Started talking about it with my girlfriend. She also got quite excited about it, and at some point it just got to the top of the list.
Yeah, it is. It's one of those up and comers on that list of like digital nomad destinations, places to move to. I mean, you got good cost of living, awesome nature, as you said. Lots of deep, rich culture that's kind of like untainted by
Yeah.
tourists. I think there's a lot to like. I've never been though. Have you been
No,
there?
I haven't. I haven't. So.
Oh man, you're awesome. So you're just getting up and leaving your comfortable life in Amsterdam and
Yeah.
moving to Georgia sight unseen.
Yeah, that's the plan. I mean, now, as people have been asking me why Georgia specifically, something that I've realized, which I think is interesting, is that in many ways it offers all the things that I actually miss here in Amsterdam. I mean, starting from mountains, of course, the Netherlands is, I think the tallest hill is like 300 meters or something. So that's something that I've definitely missed. Going
Not
to
known for the mountains in the Netherlands. No,
no,
that's true.
also like I mean the local food and wine in Georgia is supposed to be amazing. You have hot spring. Tbilisi, the capital, is actually sort of known as the Budapest of the Caucasus, which is something I didn't know, but that's something I'm very fond of as well, and you don't have here. Well, you have very cheap rent, which is also something I guess here in Amsterdam you don't necessarily have. So
it's a factor for sure. Yeah, I think that's probably a big difference. Is your girlfriend also working remote, or is she planning to find work there?
So she's been working remotely now, mostly because of COVID. But she's also looking to working fully remotely. So she actually just quit her job, her full-time job. She's going to be doing a bit of freelancing. Um, yeah, she does digital marketing. So the idea is for her to also
Nice.
work remotely.
A friend of mine from here in Valencia, Luke, and his girlfriend Hanukkah, they are. Luke was interviewed for season 1 of this show, and he's from outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and has a remote digital marketing agency for the Netherlands, based here out of Valencia. So maybe we can make a connection there.
Oh, cool! Yeah, great. Yeah, good that it can be done.
Yeah, and I mean you're kind of a leader, one of the many voices in this remote work advocacy space. I think your company certainly caters to that demographic, and you are also a voice in that kind of movement, I guess, that speaks up loudly about making remote work. And so it's cool to see you living that and not just speaking about it. It's like
Yeah.
Those two things seem to go hand in hand for you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it is funny in a way because my company is a fully remote company, but up until now we've been almost fully remote from Amsterdam in the sense that the three co-founders. Well, we're all from different nationalities, but we all met and started a company here in Amsterdam, and also our first hires were here in Amsterdam. So in that sense, it is nice, yes, that it is becoming a little bit more distributed. But at the same time, for me, I guess one of the reasons why I became an advocate of remote work is that I got the chance to do it even before starting my current company. I was also actually a digital marketer and did that as a freelancer. So got the opportunity to do it a bit and really got to see the benefits and flexibility that you get. Also having a fairly distributed family, if you want to call it that way, in the sense that my parents lived in Australia, my brother was in Germany, I was elsewhere. So for me, it was important to be able to have a few periods of the year, at least, where I didn't necessarily need to stay in one place and go to the same office. And that's a little bit, how it all started.
Yeah. And so tell like the audience that is unfamiliar with your company, can you give us a little background? I obviously know, but just give
Yes.
some context to those listening.
Yes, so yeah, I'm one of the founders at Atium. Atium is a startup. We launched it around a year ago, and what we are trying to do is to help teams and companies working remotely to build stronger human connection. One of the aspects that I've experienced myself being hard, but many others also have, is how do you actually keep remote work human, right? I think if you don't do it well, it's easy that to only connect with your colleagues on a transactional level where you're only talking about work, but obviously that can be detrimental to the culture of the company. And we approached this problem by offering companies some virtual games and activities that were specifically designed to build, in particular, belonging and psychological safety, which are two aspects that we think are the core layer on which you can then build everything else.
Oh, cool. What do you mean by psychological safety?
Sure. So, I mean, the definition of psychological safety is feeling comfortable taking a risk or making a mistake in front of your team, let's say. And it's a term actually that came out of a study that Google did to measure which traits were most likely to appear in high performing teams. And psychological safety was actually by far the number one trait. So, I mean, as you can imagine, if in a team you are very afraid to make mistakes in front of others or take risks, then it's going to be very hard for a team to perform well. So it does make sense.
And it's I one could not agree with you more. Like I think that's so important at Doist. We take this pretty seriously. Like we openly accept failing, and like if you're not failing a lot, then like you're not trying anything difficult. And so we don't really like you won't be criticized for failure. There's a lot of exploration, and if you're trying hard stuff, you're bound to fail. So that's I think very important and a critical part of our relative success. And I'm curious how that ties in with games. I see the connection, but I'm wondering if you can. Somebody might be saying, "Okay, that's awesome," and games are cool too.
Yeah.
How does Atium bring these two things together to help remote companies thrive?
Yeah. That's a very good question. And indeed, I think at first they do seem like two separate worlds. I mean, the reason why we chose games and why we actually see that games work is that, especially when you are remote, games allow you to do a couple of things. So, on one hand, games, by having, let's say, rules, create a way of communicating. And I mean, most of the games we've built so far are synchronous. I know we spoke about this. We're also working on some asynchronous games that can be done by synchronous companies. But let's focus on synchronous ones. It's completely different if you have 10 people in a video call and one person is talking and basically probably maybe he's talking to one person, 8 other people are there listening, but they're not really like involved at all. If you have a game, what you're doing is actually having everyone's interest. Everybody gets their turn, and you're much more present. So already as an experience, it's a complete different situation. So just the type of communication changes. Secondly, and I think there was a very good quote by the German poet Schiller, who said that man is at its purest form when playing. The idea being that when you're playing, you're just being yourself. You're not afraid to be foolish. You're not afraid. You're just opening up, right? Which brings us back to psychological safety. I mean, it's a safe environment where you can actually say whatever you want, do whatever you want, and you're not gonna be feeling weird about it. Whereas if it's more like a business conversation, it's gonna be different. So I think a combination of these two things makes games that have been designed in the right way a good tool to actually build better teams.
Man, this is so I love hearing the thought that's gone into this and connecting these dots, and it brought a really interesting example to my mind as you were saying this. So there's a reason that companies like invest so much in team building activities and bonding and things like this. At Doist, we get together as a team. We're 100 people spread around 35 or 40 different countries, but we bring everybody together during normal times for a 1 week retreat, and it's all focused on team bonding and just like getting to know your teammates on a human level. As you said, it can become very transactional. And we went to Chile as a team a couple of years ago, and we played a game one day. We went and played paintball, and in the down in like the Patagonia region, near Patagonia in the mountains, and we're playing paintball, and we're all dressed in full camo, and you had to it was kind of a capture the flag kind of thing. And one of my teammates, like we at one point, like it's like a firefight going on of paintball, and we were like strategizing with a teammate, and he said like, somebody's got to just run and go get the flag, like just go do it, we'll cover you or something. So this happened. Like I ran and I we got the flag, we won, and it was such an awesome experience because we were just playing, as you were saying, like, and he said to me afterwards, he's like, I feel like I saw Chase in his like purest form right there. And it really, like, I can say that moment like really brought a core of us together as like we were doing something stupid as like grown adults playing paintball, but we were having a blast. And we were in our, as you said, as you've referenced that German quote from the poem, like we were in our purest form, and it totally brought the guard down. Any guard that might be there about, like you said, the psychological safety, like that barrier got lowered through the simple act of running and getting a flag in a game of paintball. Very tangibly, I can say that's the case. So this definitely has a place in the psychological mental health is such a big thing in remote teams right now. This can play such a huge part in making remote work really work over the long term.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great story. Well, first of all, I'm very envious of the paintballing in Patagonia. I hope I get to do that one day as well. But yeah, no, great story. I think it's just actually, even for us, sometimes it's just surprising really to hear what people say after they just do, like a simple game. Like it does actually break some barriers that otherwise are there, and you never really get the chance to break. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very cool what you guys are doing. I love it. And it's awesome. It's a remote team. You're going to be going even more remote here with moving to Georgia and going even more distributed. Do you have any concerns about being? It sounds like the nucleus of the company is all in Amsterdam, but do you have any concerns about being kind of spread a little bit further away?
I mean, not too many. I mean, I have to say, of course, it has been nice that being here, we got the chance to get together a little bit more often. But we started the company already knowing that we wanted to be fully remote, and so we've worked from day one without an office. So most of the time, we've just been working remotely anyway. Plus, with the additional burden of the pandemic, which started soon after we started the company, we were also in a situation where even if we wanted to, it didn't really make too much sense to be together. So I think we've been through it now for over a year. Should be fine. And I'm definitely looking forward also to them visiting me and the other way around as well. So we'll try to do some offsites.
Yeah, you can do paintballing in the tallest mountains in Europe. It sounds like so. You can one up me.
I don't know if I'll be running. Probably out of breath, but.
Where are you going to live? Are you going to live in I can't even, how do you pronounce the capital?
Well,
Tbilisi?
Tbilisi is how I pronounce it,
Tbilisi.
but I haven't heard anyone from there pronouncing it, so I'm probably butchering
It's a
it.
horrible thing for an about abroad host to not know the capital city of the country that you're moving to. But I mean, I don't think I've ever actually said the word out loud to Tbilisi. So anyway, will you move there, or are you gonna? What's the plan?
No, that is the plan. Yes, the idea is to move there. Yeah, I mean, it's the only city that's a little bit bigger. Although I've learned that actually they moved the government to another city, Kutaisi, which also has a low cost airport that's a bit better connected. But that city is quite a bit smaller. It's only like 100,000 people versus Tbilisi that has over a million. And it also seems like the expat community or the international community is a little bit more present in Tbilisi. I think we're gonna try to learn the language a bit. I don't know. We're thinking a little bit whether we should focus more on trying to learn a bit of Russian, or
Mm,
actually try Georgian, which seems to be a very cool language, by the way. I didn't know, but there's only 14 alphabets in the world, apparently. And Georgian is one of them, despite having a
really?
tiny population.
Ah, who would have known? So they have a completely different alphabet, and not even like the Russian
No,
alphabet.
no, no. It's their own alphabet. Basically, it seems like younger people tend to speak English. The older generation speak Russian.
Kind of like Dutch. I mean, in that way, like most Dutch people our age speak English. Like
Uh,
you said, you didn't even need to learn it.
yeah,
But
I mean, yeah, I think it's gonna be quite different in the sense that here it's literally like, and I'm not exaggerating. Like homeless people speak fluent English here in the
yeah,
Netherlands, and literally, I mean, the only people are maybe more elderly people. For me, for example, my girlfriend's grandparents do not speak English, so they're the only ones that I actually speak a bit of Dutch. I expect in Georgia it's going to be a little bit different. I mean, but coming from Italy, for example, already there, it's not that many people speak
yeah,
fluent English,
yeah.
so I expect it's going to be a little bit more like that.
But you mentioned you were trying to weigh whether or not you should pick up Russian. Is Russian pretty prevalent there as well? Like,
I,
and more so than English, or on the same level? Do you have any idea?
that's the what I've read, at least. That
Hmm.
at least, especially like I said, in the older generations, they were actually raised almost bilingual when it was part of the Soviet Union. So they speak Russian. Part of the younger generation now don't learn at school anymore, so it's a little bit more English. But that's also one of the things we'll need to see a little bit. But I was mentioning it because it's one of the reasons I think why we also want to be in Tbilisi, at least initially, because otherwise it might also be a little bit hard if you are somewhere where you have no other internationals and nobody else speaks the language. It's I want to get out of the comfort zone, but it might be a step too far. You know?
Yeah, it's like I want to spread the wings a little bit, get out of my comfort zone, but then not that far. Like I still want to be able to communicate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, again, like I have to be careful a little bit with how I think about it because if it would be a trip, if I went traveling just for a few weeks, it would sound ideal also to be somewhere where nobody speaks your language and you're really like out of your comfort zone. But if you're planning to stay there for like 6 months, a year, or longer, there's other aspects that come into play. So you want to balance it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This season is brought to you by my good friends over at Insured Nomads. They're the absolute best in the business when it comes to providing health, travel, and medical insurance for nomads, expats, and really just all forms of world travelers. I know insurance is often something that's overlooked when we're fantasizing about traveling the world, but it's absolutely necessity that we address this because often the policy you have in your home country isn't going to cover you while you're abroad. And it's also a requirement, as a lot of people may not realize, to actually buy private travel or expat insurance, as it's called sometimes, to obtain a visa or even enter certain countries. So, fortunately, there are companies like Insured Nomads to help us with this. Not only do they have excellent coverage and great prices, but they're also providing a first-class experience with additional perks and best-in-class technology via their app. It's an amazing experience. I can't recommend it enough. Now, this is a company that was built by world travelers for world travelers, so they know what it's like to find yourself in a difficult medical situation abroad, and they want to keep you from having that same bad experience. So the next time you're planning a trip abroad, whether it's for a week or a lifetime, check out Insured Nomads via the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the episode. We touched on this earlier, but I wondered if you could expand on it a little bit. Like, so and I genuinely don't know the answer, so I'm kind of like asking out of actual curiosity here. Georgia has a remote work visa, I believe. Is that correct? And if so, or if not, is that what you're using, or you're using something different to stay there? And do you know anything about, generally speaking, like I know you're European, but just in general, like what is the kind of regulation around like coming to Georgia and staying
Yeah.
and leaving, and not
Well,
trying to ask you to be a pro on this, but just share what you know.
yeah. So from what I gathered, it's actually even simpler than the remote work visa. You can actually enter the country for up to 1 year without a visa if you are from a list of, I believe, like 90 nationalities, which includes pretty much most of the European Union, the United States. I mean, it's quite broad.
Yeah.
After 1 year, I haven't really looked into it. I believe then there are, yes, some types of visas that are more related also to the work that you do, and there might be some requirements. But for now, I saw it was very straightforward to go there, 1 year visa free, up to 1 year. So that's how we're gonna get started.
Yeah. Ah, cool. So that's super, super easy. You
Yeah.
just, I think that what we're referring to is a relatively new thing.
It
Though, like
is.
they've made this, and they're doing it. I think they're doing it the right way. It's working compared to some of the other countries which are saying we want to attract digital nomads, we want to attract remote workers. All you have to do is get this visa, and then that visa process is a pain in the ass, and you have to do a bunch of paperwork, or you have to prove you have a lot of income.
Yeah.
And not all, I mean, people tend to think like tech workers and remote workers are making a bunch of money, but like a lot of us are working at startups, and the money's hopefully going to come
Yeah.
at a later date, and you're freelancing, you're piecing it together, so that's not always possible. So some of these that are requiring thousands of euros or dollars a month in guaranteed income, and maybe paying taxes and stuff, like they're not really doing it right, I don't think, if they just want to attract people to come and spend money and to invest in the economy there. And it sounds like Georgia's making it super simple. Like, hey, just come. You got a year to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds indeed like they are keeping it simple. I mean, there are still, I guess, but more on a personal level, some things that I still need to figure out exactly. Of course, working abroad in terms of taxation, in terms of different requirements, in the sense that, for example, now I'm actually employed by the company that I'm a founder of, but it's a Dutch company. I'm employed here as a Dutch resident, so there's a few things we're still figuring out. But indeed, at least the counter itself makes it fairly straightforward.
If you stay active even a little bit on LinkedIn, you'll have no problem having tons of professionals reach out to you and say, "Hey, you work in Georgia. Let me help you with your taxes. I specialize in that.
Yeah.
I can attest to this."
Okay, perfect.
You won't have any problem finding the information once you get there. Actually, on that note, have you found any particular like websites or forums or anywhere that you're going in particular to get info on moving to Georgia? Like some people use Facebook groups a lot. Some people use like particular forums. Anywhere in particular you found some info?
I just Googled a little bit and found a few different websites, but I wouldn't be able to tell you the
Yeah.
names on the top of my head. I just looked
no
around a
worries.
few different places, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. That's and are you renting a place ahead of time? Like do you lock in like a short-term rental, or do you go ahead and lock in a lease, or what's that look
Yeah.
like?
So it seems like the best way to do it might be to actually just go for a long stay Airbnb,
Yeah.
which in other places probably sounds very expensive, but there it seems to be quite reasonable. And I mean, with that, I think also obviously we're doing it whilst we're still to a large extent in the middle of a pandemic, which doesn't make things any easier. So we started researching a little bit, but I think we're probably gonna actually book something a little bit closer to when we're moving, and maybe start with something for 3 months.
Yeah.
Then once we're there, figure it out a little.
That's what we did when we moved here to Valencia. It's not what we had done in the past, and that had come back to bite us. But 3 months actually flies by. Like we rented an Airbnb here for 3 months, and we also weren't sure if we were going to stay in Valencia beyond that. We thought we'll come here, we'll try it out for 3 months, and then decide if we want to stay or go or whatever. and that gave us time to kind of get situated. But some people might say, oh, 3 months, that's a really long time. But like by the time, you get settled and start figuring out different neighborhoods and pricing and making contacts, and then having to, like, sometimes it can be competitive,
Yeah.
3 months can fly by pretty quick. So that's what I generally recommend. Like when people ask, I'm moving to a new city, I don't know, how should I do this? That's one of my first
Yeah.
recommendations is like, just rent a place for 3 months, and then you're settled. Like you've got that part figured out. That's a huge chunk of your life. You got that figured out. You can figure out the details once you get there.
Yeah, I think it does make sense to do it that way. Actually, maybe I can tell a little bit about how it was when I moved here to Amsterdam, because housing here is a bit of a mess. So if anybody's planning to move to Amsterdam,
Yes, please, please. I
um,
bet there's probably a lot more people listening to this that are planning to move to Amsterdam than Georgia right now. So like we should definitely touch on this.
yeah, well, so Amsterdam, I think, is one of those cities, and I guess there's a few this in amongst Western European capitals where it's very tough and very expensive to get a decent flat. So when I first moved here, my girlfriend had already moved here a few months before me. I was still working in Italy at the time. It also happened very suddenly, actually. I mean, we can maybe talk about that afterwards.
Yeah.
But I basically came here to visit her and ended up getting a job offer for a job that was starting literally in 3 days. So I quickly moved in with her, but she was living with some other people, so it wasn't ideal, and we had to figure out, find a place pretty fast. We found a place that was temporary for 6 months. There was a woman that was living in her flat and going traveling for 6 months, so she could rent it out. It was pretty cheap. It was the first time we were also moving in together, so we were also like, let's try it,
Yeah. It's there's a end in sight if it's miserable.
yeah, exactly.
Before you continue, do you mind me asking what website did you use to find that 6 month? Do you recall?
I'm not sure about that one specifically, but I can mention like two or three that are usually quite good.
Yeah.
So you have one called Funda, Funda. That's one of the biggest ones. Otherwise, I mean, surprisingly, but Craigslist still
Yeah.
works.
It's real.
Sometimes. Also, there's less people looking at it, so it might slightly increase your chances of going to see something that not that many people have seen, which here is a real problem. Like flats really go, you have to sort of make an offer when you're still there doing the viewing, otherwise it's gone.
Yeah, that is really, really true. There's one called Spot a Home, I think. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, but it's also like Airbnb is obviously you can do month to month rentals, but it's not really set up for like 3-6 month rentals, and you pay a premium for using it, and that's kind of what everybody goes to. But there's some of these that are really they're set up for this kind of a situation where, hey, I'm going to be, this becomes relevant, more and more relevant for people like yourself who want to go try a place for a few months.
Yeah.
And also people like, say me, if I want to go travel for 3 months and just rent out or sublet my current place. So I think this is becoming more and more of a topic. So that's why I asked, but sorry to interrupt.
No. I think we were looking a little bit more at the more traditional, just like websites where you look for long-term rental. I actually, I wish I would remember the name because it ended up being useful, but we later found out about this service that basically emails you every day all the new rentals that fit your criteria from like 4 or 5 different websites. And you pay, I don't know, like €5 a month, but that one was actually, like I said, since you have to be very fast in replying, it did actually help out a lot. Anyway, so we were for 6 months in one place in the east of Amsterdam, which is actually a nice area. It's up and coming, quite international. There's
what's it called?
Oost, so just east in
Oost.
In Dutch. And then we had to find something else. So we found another place and we're like, okay, now let's try to find something where we can stay for a bit longer. Got another flat, a little bit more south, an area called Schinkelbuurt, which I always had also the hardest streets every time. I really struggled to pronounce them. I have to say, we had the first one's called Eerste Atium, which took me
Whew.
months to learn. The second one was like Andreas Helfalstra. There's all these Dutch sounds.
That doesn't roll off the tongue super easily for a non-native Dutch
No,
speaker.
no. But anyway, yeah, we got another place, and after 6 months we were there, the owners were like, "Oh, actually, we decided to sell it. Do you want to buy it?" At that time, we were not really ready or interested in buying, so I had to look for another place. So in 5 years here, we're in our fourth flat, basically, and yeah, it can be a bit tricky to get a good
Yeah.
house. So you have a lot of really old houses with, the problems that old houses have, from mice to pipes bursting, and yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like that beautiful architecture you see on the outside. It looks amazing, and then the bones are all often a little creaky.
yeah. One good thing to know is that, from what I heard, at least, the prices of rents have gone down quite a bit now, because of COVID, because there's less expats moving. Because the main problem was basically that there is very little availability of flats that are available for privates, and now because of COVID, that changed a bit. So it might be good timing to get a good deal if you are moving. For buying, the prices stayed high because people
Yeah.
were buying, but for renting, it got a little bit
It's
better.
the same here in Spain, and I was speaking locally about Valencia though, but it's the same. Like the prices, like rent prices dropped, and landlords are like trying to lock you into long term contracts on your current. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, we'll offer you. I have a friend that signed a 3-year lease to lock them into their current rate, and then, but the housing for sales like skyrocketed, and people are kind of baffled as to like why, but I don't know if remote work plays into that or not. But yeah, it's interesting.
yeah. I mean, I guess lots of people sort of uh, were stuck in their flats or houses for longer than they wanted, and so realized they probably wanted something a little bit bigger, a bit different, and then are buying a lot. I know, for example, in Italy, it's also a similar situation. That I have some friends that
Yeah.
were looking for a nice house somewhere in the countryside, and apparently they were like, okay, I mean, probably the prices might have gone down, and instead they're just like as
Yeah.
high as they've ever been.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also think like people started rethinking like what's important to them, as far as family goes, or like having space. Like you had more time in your home to think about like, is this what I want, or do I want something different? And then also not going out and spending money. People saved money,
Yeah,
so they had more to spend on their dream home if they wanted to after the end of a year.
yeah, definitely. And actually, here in the Netherlands, the prices of houses have been growing like crazy for forever, basically. So, in hindsight, had we bought something when we first moved here, it would have been a pretty good financial decision.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it goes a little bit also with the mindset that we are talking about a little bit about before, with the restlessness. But I always felt like it was a little bit too much of a big commitment. So yeah,
Move towards like kind of wrapping this up here, but just sort of like in general, if someone's moving to Amsterdam for the first time, any general tips you want to give them if somebody's considering it as a place to live, like I don't know, neighborhoods or just things that you've learned along the way to do, not to do,
yeah.
that come to mind.
Yeah, well, so I mean, I think in terms of neighborhoods, in the end, almost anything that's within the ring became a very nice area. It's very gentrified. The locals are complaining, but it's hard to find a neighborhood that you're like, oh, I wouldn't really want to live there. So then becomes a little bit more of a question of also like where your interests are. I'm quite happy, I have to say, here in the pipe. Depends a little bit on which street you are. It can be a little bit too noisy and too hipster. But if you find a good street, positioning wise, it's great, and there's lots of nice restaurants, bars, shops around.
I
Uh,
personally also really like the pipe. I think that's a really cool area. I would probably like focus my energy on there based on my limited experience in Amsterdam.
yeah,
That's like where I kind of gravitate to also.
yeah. I think one thing I would definitely say is for people that have visited Amsterdam and maybe were like, I really don't see myself living there. I had that the first time that I visited Amsterdam as a tourist. There's a huge difference between the sort of like center, although they're probably taking the opportunity of the pandemic to change that, because I mean, yeah, there is basically mostly coffee shop, red light districts. It's like a lot of stone tourists going around, and you don't really get the feeling of, oh, I wish I lived here. Right? That's in the end a very small area, and if you live here, you basically hardly go there, or you go there when you want to. So that shouldn't put you off. So give it a chance,
Yeah.
at least on a second trip, to visit a little bit more the other areas. I think that's definitely something you can say. Other than that, I mean, a good tip that I think applies to Amsterdam, but also anywhere else, is just try to find a hobby or something that puts you in regular contact with people. I'm very fond of playing padel, which I guess is huge there in Spain as
Yeah.
well. For example, that for me really helped also to make friends, both Dutch and international. You know, everybody has something they like, so that's always a good way to at least meet a few people outside of work if you're not working remotely. Otherwise, of course, work
Yeah.
can help. One thing, maybe last thing, the Dutch tend to, I mean, they can be friendly, but they tend to really avoid mixing groups of people that they know from different places. And as an Italian, I found that a bit weird at the beginning, in the sense that I would maybe become friends with someone and then be like, I don't know, like, you wanna grab a beer, tomorrow or something, and it would be like, oh no, I can't. I'm meeting up with some friends from football or from,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in Italy, that would be quite odd, because you would actually be like, "Oh, I'm going for a beer with some friends from football. Do you want to join?"
Yeah, you guys are very like, I mean, the Spanish are this way too. It's like all inclusive, like the more the merrier mentality, and like not this like separation of like
Yeah.
groups and friends and family.
So that does happen here, and it does make it a little bit harder in the end also to meet new people outside of your groups, because there is a bit less of these spontaneous get-togethers. But yeah, it's just cultural.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's some of the fun stuff that like you learn these things living in a place for long enough. You can start to notice these differences between the different cultures and appreciate some of them, because on the flip side of that, like maybe you could get like some really deep good relationships with someone who's not going to mix the group with five or six other people that you may not know. Like they'll want to go and just have that beer with just you.
Yeah, yeah,
And so there's pros and cons to this.
yeah. That's true.
But yeah, it's super interesting. Awesome. Well, I think we covered quite a bit in in this amount of time. Georgia and the Netherlands, some time in Italy, and how to make it happen. So, yeah, thank you for sharing the story, for touching on what you guys are doing at Atium. I think it's awesome, and I'm excited for you in the next chapter in Georgia. I hope we can touch base after some time there and hear what it's like from the perspective inside the country once you're actually like settled in.
Thanks. Yeah, we should definitely touch base again. I just thought of a last minute bonus tip,
Ah, awesome.
which actually applies both to people that are interested in moving to the Netherlands or to Italy. Both countries have programs with some very good fiscal incentives for people moving there. The Netherlands has a 30% ruling, so 30% of your salary is tax free. And Italy actually has slightly different rules, but it goes up to 90%. So those are two things worth looking into
Wow.
if you are considering moving to those countries.
What would someone search to find more information on that, do you think?
So for the Netherlands, it's 30% ruling. You will definitely find it.
Okay.
In Italy, it might be a little bit harder, but I mean, it started off with a law that they called drain repairment or something like that, because the idea was to attract back Italians that moved abroad, which is a big problem. I can imagine if you look for fiscal benefits for moving to Italy, it might come up with something. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, yeah, I never heard of that before. I know that Italy's had this big push to bring Italians back home that have moved abroad and offering incentives in that way. But your understanding is this might apply to non-Italians as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, that's right. I've recently learned that actually.
Ah, super cool. Wow. I'll definitely look into that, and as someone who would love to spend some more time in Italy. Italy is probably where we go most. There's tons of flights from Valencia to Italy. It's super cheap, and it's the country outside of Spain where I've spent the most time in the world, probably outside of my home country and here. So anyway, I love it there, and would be really cool to have the ability to spend some more time there in a longer kind of format, more long-term format.
Yeah, we'll talk about that as well another time.
Yeah, sounds good. Mario, thank you so much, man. It was great to get to know you a little bit better, hear more about the story, and yeah, look forward to hearing how Georgia goes.
Thanks, Chase. Speak to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. You can visit aboutabroad.com to get our latest updates and listen to past episodes, or find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, really anywhere you get your podcasts. On that note, if you enjoyed the show, feel free to subscribe, and if inclined, leave a few stars and a review. It's truly, truly appreciated and will help more wanderers just like you find us. Until the next time, adios from España.